Thank you all for making time to be part of our discussion this morning, which is going to be looking at different segments of agriculture, and particularly trying to look at the challenges and also establishing some of the solutions that we need to address.
Zambia has lots of bright businessmen and women, smart people for a smart economy. They are ready to take a risk, to put forth an innovative idea, and to follow their dreams of improving their lives and the lives of their communities and their country. But they need help. They need access to capital. They also need help from the government, I would argue. The biggest applause line I got last week was when I said, when I called for less regulation, for the government to make it easier for businessmen, entrepreneurs to do business.
As minister responsible, I'm always asking myself, who has that magic wand to change this, to make agriculture a real employer of people? On one hand, the producers would say to me, let the market forces determine prices of commodities. Government should not interfere in grain marketing. I tried. This year I tried. I stood firm. I said government would not allow the Food Reserve Agency to go and buy maize. But the producers, through their unions, through their association, went with screaming headlines in newspapers. This is the minister of millers. He's not protecting the farmer.
This country was worse than it is today. It was really bad. And we all talked about diversification. We talked about concentrating on agriculture. Really, let's move agriculture. That was the buzzword. The period passed, the copper price started going up, and when our workers came in, we forgot basically about agriculture. It has happened again. To me, I think it's a blessing in disguise. I think this time, diversification, putting money in agriculture should never be withdrawn.
I strongly feel that we've simply got to make farming a business. We must make farmers bankable, and we must assist the farmers with obtaining that finance and making themselves into a business organization. But I feel that we have to, as a nation, somehow get to the point where we can reduce our cost of production in this country. Therefore,
our approach under Feed the Future here in Zambia is to really look at agriculture as a knowledge-intensive field. So we do quite a number of programs around extension and training, building the knowledge base at the farmer, agro-dealer, input, output supplier level, looking at it as a business. I think unlocking finance is really critical. These are clear barriers for smallholder farmers to get into finance.
I am a strong advocate of using the market to develop the agriculture sector. And I know that when we use the market, we can use the market to bring in and use it to reach out to the small-scale farmers, and then the small-scale farmers will be able to participate gainfully out of that particular intervention, and then graduate out of poverty.
The export price of maize, the export price of cattle, the export price of whatever is actually doubled. Now, of course, the minister is not issuing export licenses for cattle at the moment because he's worried about the consumer pressure that's going to come on him. These are the kind of tensions that you get. But the banks are trying to stop the kwacha, or the depreciation of the kwacha or inflation by basically drawing money out of the private sector. You're killing the very beast that you're actually trying to wake up.
Government is very concerned about the little money that is going into research and development and extension services. Yeah. Because that is the only way that we can improve productivity. I mean, we tend to think that grain, maize particularly, is such an important commodity above all others, and we have to spend billions of taxpayers' money to secure the crop, move it, warehouse it, and store it over 7 months at huge cost. And yet we don't do the same for milk. We don't do the same for beef. We don't do the same for groundnuts. We don't do the same for all other commodities.
Some good ideas have been put on the table. The Marketing Council is one that USAID and with other stakeholders has seen as a great opportunity for stabilizing, creating transparent, predictable policies and having that stakeholder consultation and taking a bit of the politics that can be present, in particular out of maize marketing. We've heard some very good examples about financing with whether that's outgrower schemes, forward contracts, in kind. We have some programs that are working very successfully with input loans around solar irrigation to address both power and irrigation.
Let's encourage the private sector participation, and let's identify what incentives that we are going to apply to ensure that the private sector do participate in this agriculture development. And then also on the side of government, let's continue looking at the policies that we have and let them be consistent. And let's take a review of what the current policies and see where we need to make improvements.
Your Excellency, as far as the donor community and those assembled here that help us, you know there's a lot of positives. I was personally involved with the Magoi dairy farmers. We started with 20 farmers in '97. We've now got over 400 farmers. We had 27 litres of milk, and we're now producing over 6,000 litres of milk. So these outgrower schemes, supported schemes, really do work. Let's not call them peasant farmers. Let's cut the word peasant out of the Zambian vocabulary. They are farmers. And you've got big farmers and little farmers, and everything, but they are not peasant farmers.
I think we've achieved a lot. Minister, I would like to urge you, you're a colleague, that please leave the borders open. We will support you as stakeholders. We've seen something that today we should be very proud as Zambians, and that is the seed industry. The agricultural seed industry has been open for the past 9 years. No one realizes what really happened at that time. It has been open. We're exporting from Zambia to 17 different countries. As far north as Ethiopia, coming from Zambia, the seed industry is vibrant, is dynamic, and it's moving. You go to the AU NEPAD, they will be talking about the most vibrant seed industry in Africa, apart from South Africa, in the Zambian seed industry. We left it open. I think it's time that we do the same, not only with maize, but all other agricultural commodities, wheat, soyas, mention it. Let's open it, because we've had an example. You open the border, you can only reap the benefits.
Diversification, what are we doing about it? Again, this year, we decided to increase the number of crops that we're giving to farmers on the Farmer Input Support Program. We've increased them to 9. We've introduced beans, common beans. We've introduced orange maize. And I'm hoping that next year, the private sector will be willing to pay a higher price for orange maize than for the white maize because of its nutrition content. Just to end on the issue of keeping the borders open, yes, we shall keep the borders open. But obviously we shall keep them open for as long as they don't threaten national food security. Like you all said, it is the responsibility of government to ensure that there is national food security. And also, like I mentioned to the farmers when I was launching the harvest of wheat, if the wheat farmers or the soybean farmer or whichever farmer, if they decide to exploit the consumer because we're keeping borders open, we're not allowing importation of oil, and therefore they decide to increase commodity prices, it will leave us with no choice but to say, look, the consumer is hurting. So as long as we're selling at no more than import parity price, I'll have no problem.
So, Pennifer, first of all, thank you very much for doing such an excellent job. Second, Nambula and the WECREATE team, thank you very much for being here and for the great partnership that we've established. I want to thank the embassy staff for doing such an excellent job today. Thank the audience for being here and for all your great questions. Thank my fellow panelists. for their contributions, and especially the Minister for his presence here. I think, in fact, his presence here is exactly the kind of transparency and openness that we want to have with the government, both on the part of the donor community, but more importantly, I think the Zambian populace. When we talk about a crisis being an opportunity, that's in part because sometimes during a crisis it's easier to change things. There's always resistance to change. Whatever policy you set up inevitably creates vested interests that don't want to see things change. And it's often only during a crisis that it becomes obvious that their interest in maintaining the status quo is a selfish interest, and that it's not in the interests of the public as a whole. And I think that that's actually why you have an opportunity right now to take some of the policies that have kind of grown up over time and begin to change them. And the one that occurred to me, Mark, when you were talking earlier, is when you talk about how consumers want low prices and producers want high prices. Well, in the United States, I know exactly what happens in that situation. It's the government that makes up the difference. It's subsidies, actually, that make up the difference. And, I think that that's probably true here as well, and that in the current environment, that's probably unsustainable. And that's what actually needs to be looked at is reducing those subsidies and moving to a more market-based system.